How did we get into the biggest housing shortage in US history? And more importantly, how does this impact you? In 2018, we were short about 2.8 million homes. You fast forward just 6 years later, and that number has more than doubled. And get this, in 1970, we built over 418,000 entry-level homes a year. But by 2020, that number plummeted to just 55,000. So how do we get here, and what does this mean for the future of housing in America? Well, I'm breaking all this down for you in this video today, but before we dive in, my name is Mitch. I'm a luxury real estate broker in the Charlotte and the Lake Norman areas. And if you want to stay ahead of the curve in the wild housing market that we're in, hit that like and subscribe button. I post weekly videos just like this to keep you informed on all things real estate, but let's dive in. Let's look at the numbers. In 1970, the average home price was around $23,000. If you fast forward to 2024, it's a staggering $430,000, which is at 18.7 times higher than it was. But here's the kicker. While home prices have skyrocketed, household incomes just have not kept pace. So back in the 70s, you needed an income of just $9,800 to buy a home. But today, that number for a household is around $78,000, which is an increase of only 8 times. So you can see the affordability has significantly changed. But even more telling is the average age of a home buyer in 1970 was just 28 years old. Today, it's 56, a gap of nearly 3 decades. Younger buyers are being locked out of the housing market entirely in 2024. This trend tells us that the American dream of home ownership is starting to slowly slip further and further away, especially for the younger generations. And even to make matters worse, starter homes, those that are typically under 1,400 square feet and less, have virtually dissipated. In 1963, 37% of homes were all starter, peaking at 40% in 1980. But today, that figure has dropped to just 10%, meaning 1 out of 10 new homes are only affordable that are being built in entry-level options. It's no wonder why millennials, the largest generation of home buyers in US history, are struggling to find homes. So how did we even get here? The housing crisis is complex and it's fueled by several major factors, but I'm going to break some of those down now. The number one is rising inflation. Inflation drove up a lot of costs, especially raw materials for building. Framing lumber prices are up 20% in 2024 compared to last year, and the tight supply is making it even harder for builders to keep up with demand. These rising costs force builders to prioritize larger, more profitable homes, leaving the affordable housing completely in the dust. Next is the labor shortage. Over 81% of construction firms report difficulty finding workers. This shortage not only delays projects, but also drives up wages significantly, adding even more pressure to the already high construction. Without a steady labor force, building affordable homes becomes nearly impossible. But the land acquisition and zoning restrictions are also another massive barrier. Have you heard of NIMBYism? It stands for not in my backyard, and it's one of the biggest obstacles in development right now in high demand areas across the country. Local governments are often impose strict zoning rules that limit where and when certain things can be built. This is a local problem that requires local solutions. But until the government loosens up these restrictions, builders are stuck. The federal government could now, of course, unlock some federal land for development, but the issue is that land going to be in demand where people want to live or not? That is a big question that remains open. Now on the demand side, the millennials aged 28 to 43 are the largest group of home buyers in the country that we've ever seen. But they're stuck. Builders aren't producing entry-level homes due to the slim profit margins, the inflation, which is making it harder for these homes to be built affordably. Did you know the average cost of a lot with the permits, zoning, regulation is around $94,000 before the first brick is even laid? That's a tough starting point for affordability. Finally, let's talk about the rise of the institutional buyers like BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. These corporate giants have been snapping up entry-level homes all across the country, often paying well above market value. But why? They're turning these properties into rental units knowing that many millennials won't be able to buy. Their market share of single-family homes has swelled from 7% in the early 2000s to 16% in 2024. In some neighborhoods, these funds own entire blocks, giving them control over the rents and restricting supply. This drives prices higher and makes home ownership even more unattainable for regular homebuyers. So where do we go from here? The housing crisis isn't a simple fix. It's a tangled web of rising costs, labor shortages, land restrictions, corporate greed, high interest rates, and builders need incentives to produce affordable homes. And the governments, both local and federally, must work together to address zoning and land use issues. Without this coordinated action, this crisis will only deepen. For millennials and first-time homebuyers, the best advice is to stay informed and prepared. Work with, of course, a trusted agent to explore the best options for you, and only buy, of course, when you're ready. But this crisis is unequivocally an epidemic right now in the United States, and we need more housing.